Everyone is excited about the Chargers 2023 draft class, but on today's show, we're looking back at the 2022 class and grading last year's rookies now that they have a year under their belt.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 7 seasons, but this is our 5th season as a host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on YouTube and listen wherever you get your podcasts. David, what do we got today?
On today's show, we are going to take a look back at the 2022 draft class. We did some initial grades after the picks, and now that we have the benefit of hindsight, now that we have an entire year body of work to go back and look, we decided to be a good idea to go back and see where those grades were and see where the grades are now.
Yeah, it was really interesting to go back and look at where we had these guys, and I think there were a couple that we were very close on, and guys that, we didn't really, I think, get to see enough of last year. So there's definitely some incomplete grades, but some guys that are off to much more promising starts than others for sure. Let's go with pick number 1, David. The Chargers had the 17th pick in the 2022 draft, and then went with a guy that we liked, right? We liked a couple of different guys there. They had a few guys available, but they ended up going with Boston College guard Zion Johnson. We now know what Zion did as a rookie. I thought he played pretty well, especially for a rookie transitioning at guard into the NFL level. What did you give him last year? What is your regrade this year?
Yeah, so last year I thought that the pick was a strong one. I thought that he was one of the safest prospects that was in the draft at the time, and the Chargers had a direct need at the position that he was going to come in to fill. So my initial grade was an A+. I thought it was just one of those perfect situations. And then after looking at his 2022 season, he played all of his snaps at right guard, over 1,184 snaps, 6 penalties, 40 pressures, 7 hits, and 5 sacks. So I think, he had an up and down season. He had some flashes of brilliance. He had some games and some moments where you're like, okay, that's a rookie moment right there. But I feel like he definitely progressed throughout the year. I can't go back and give it an A+ after the year. It did regress a little bit, but I still have a very high mark. I give the regrade a B.
I think that's fair. I think the other thing too is when you take a guard specifically in the first round, I don't think you're hoping to get a passable guard out of that pick, right? I think if you're spending a premium pick on a non-premium position like guard, you would like to, see a top 10 guard in the league. It's going to be very hard to show that as a rookie, and Zion Johnson, I think, showed you that he has all the tools to do that. But through 1 year, I could understand why you would bump it down. I had it slightly worse than you did to start last year. I gave it an A. Thought it was a very, very solid pick. And now, looking back, I give it a B+. So, went down a couple of spots for me. I thought he played well. We're going to see how he does on the left side, which is his more natural position this year. And he'll be playing, fingers crossed, in between Rashawn Slater and Corey Linsley. So I love that trio together. I'm excited to see what that trio can do.
Yes.
Like I said, it's tough. But now the thing is you look back and see, okay, well, I remember last year we really wanted Jermaine Johnson, right? He didn't do much as a rookie, but then you see someone like Christian Watson, right? Or even Trent McDuffie was the guy we liked last year. I'm glad they did not take Trevor Penning. I'm still glad about that now because that was where all the rumors went. They're going to get a right tackle. They're going to go Trevor Penning. But it is interesting now, David, to think, okay, yeah, obviously you like Quentin Johnston, but now okay, well, Christian Watson, if I would have known he was going to do that, maybe I'd take that instead.
The hindsight is always 20/20, my friend. Now that you have the full body of work and you're
called the regrade show.
Exactly. Hey, you see Christian Watson and you put him with Justin Herbert and you see some of the things that those guys could do together, or at least envision or visualize the things that those guys could do, I mean, yeah, it definitely would have been an exciting and more of a sexy pick too, right? I mean, it's easier to see the production and get excited about it when a wide receiver is going off versus a guard who just, plays a very unspectacular, unceremonious position that just doesn't get a lot of praise.
Of course, and like you're thinking differently about the offensive line this year potentially if you go that way too. Obviously, you end up getting Jamari Salyer later, so it probably would have been Jamari Salyer and Matt Filer last year. We don't know what that would have looked like, but you would have been much more hamstrung with the Rashawn Slater injury. I can tell you that. So that Zion Johnson, signing or the deal, like the draft, it really solidified their line enough to where they were able to survive losing Rashawn Slater last year.
Yeah.
Putting Jamari Salyer at left tackle and keeping Zion Johnson there without needing Jamari Salyer to come in and play for you immediately because you double dipped at that position. Then Jamari Salyer, we all know what he did. I'm excited to regrade him because, I had a high grade and somehow I had to find a higher grade for him because he even outplayed, a pick that we really, really liked last year. So
very
let's get to JT Woods, David. The Chargers did not have a second-round pick as they sent it for Khalil Mack to the Bears, but they did with their third-round pick take JT Woods, the safety from Baylor. Only 30 snaps, David, as a rookie. Kind of what did you think? What was your thought process when you were going through trying to regrade someone like JT Woods that we just didn't really see enough of?
Yeah, I think the first thing that pops into your mind is the kid that, gets sick, halfway through the school year and he's not able to complete the year and he finishes with an incomplete. And I think that's just the first thing that comes to my mind because we just didn't see enough. There just wasn't a lot out there. And the entire issue with JT Woods has always been the same. And we're sitting here a year later with those same questions about his tackling. It's just not a surprise. And it manifested itself last year, and it was one of the major reasons why, despite his obvious natural gifts at tracking the football and the range and the speed, you just can't put him on the field because he's still a liability as a tackler. Originally I had a B- for the JT Woods pick because I do think it was a sneaky kind of pick for, the safety depth. But after the redraft, if I have to give it a grade, I think it's more of like a C+ type of situation just because I need to see more.
Yeah, if I had to grade it, I'd give it a D+, and I honestly think that's probably...
Yeah, probably more C- if I'm being honest.
I think that's probably generous just because, the problem is if you're a safety, even with the speed and everything we've seen, if you can't tackle, not only can't help the defense, you can't help on special teams, right? Because if you have a gunner that goes down there and can't tackle, that doesn't help you very much, right? And we saw him get beat out on special teams by guys like Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard, who became fixtures on that unit that really turned that group around.
Yeah.
And JT Woods, unfortunately, kind of the lasting memory we have of him and the most we saw of him was in the preseason where he was literally tackling Dean Leonard off of another dude, right, to give up a touchdown and tackling his own guy. One of the best tackles he made last year was in the preseason against Dean Leonard. But, I think the things you did see, right, you saw the range. He has the speed, a 4.3 guy, which is nice. He has takeaway ability. He has, ball hawking ability. But if you can't tackle it, it doesn't really mean anything. I thought there were some moments towards the end where you could actually see some nice things as far as him diagnosing what's in front of him shooting through the line of scrimmage to make tackles in the backfield even at times. The problem is he just always ended up on the ground with nobody actually being tackled, right? So it's you see a lot of the things there, but just when there's this one glaring issue, it's so hard to kind of appreciate the other things he does well. David, this is serious because the Chargers seem like they're really relying on him to play a big role for them this year, and it's so hard to figure, from what we saw last year to what we're going to see this year on what it's going to look like. Last year, he did not take part in a lot of the offseason activities, right? He got in that strength and conditioning program late. He got into the activities late defensively. This year, he has a full offseason. We can hope, but David, at the same time, not all draft picks work out, right? So as much as we're hoping for the best, you still have to kind of take that with a grain of salt because it's he's going to have to get bigger. He has to get stronger. He has to show the ability to tackle, a lot better. I'm pretty sure he had more missed tackles than he had tackles last year, which means...
It was 2 and 2, actually. 2 tackles, 2 missed tackles.
Right. So that's a 50% missed tackle rate, which is over a bigger sample size would be the highest ever. But A lot of skills there to work with. It's an incomplete, right? D plus isn't fair because we just haven't seen enough of him. That's just if you force me to put a grade on it. I don't know how you could go anything higher than that. There's still some reason, some things and tools that you can be excited about, but we're a long way from thinking of him as part of a focal point of this defense in 2023. And with the safety depth they have right now, with no John Johnson or any other veterans in the mix besides Lohi Gilman and Derwin James, like just an extremely thin unit. And it seems like they're asking probably too much compared to what we've actually seen the dude do. But there are a lot more picks I want to get into, including another really hard judge, I think, with Isaiah Spiller, who is probably going to have a bigger role this year. But some really, really solid picks on day 2 and day 3. A lot of grades getting raised by us in this redraft, Dave, and we're going to get to after this. But I do need to tell you guys that you should be making a fast break to FanDuel for the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 in bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Right now you guys have the Lakers versus the Nuggets Western Conference Finals. That's tipping off tonight, and I know the NBA Finals playoffs have already been insane so far. Well, I mean, it's only going to heat up from here. There's only 4 teams left, and this is the best place to place your bets. And you can also do hockey playoffs, which have been insane as well. Baseball is in full swing, no pun intended. And you get great promotions every day on a safe and secure app, and you always get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on all of your playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's continue this 2020 redraft here, David, or grading, the 2022 draft class again now that we have one season in the books. And I like this because it does give us, we actually have seen these guys now. It's not just all projection. We actually have some tangible things to go off of. At the same time, I think we saw much more contributions out of last year's draft class than I think you do on average for rookies, right? A lot of guys playing meaningful snaps for them, but the second and third picks that the Chargers had, which would be in the 3rd and the 4th rounds, you didn't see as much. With JT Woods, right, one of the guys you could have had instead of him was Kirby Joseph, who had 4 interceptions for the Lions last year. Yeah. Could have even gone with Dameon Pierce, who had a good run, potentially the offensive rookie of the year last year. Instead, in the 4th round, the Chargers ended up going with Isaiah Spiller, another guy who didn't play very much, David, but was pretty uninspiring in the very, very small sample size that we got to see of him. What did you give him last year? What did you give him this year?
Yeah, so last year I saw the spot make sense. I mean, for the pick, because at that time you didn't know what you had in Josh Kelly, and you thought that there was a real chance that Isaiah Spiller could come in and really take that RB2 role and run with it. But everything just didn't get started for him. He was injured right out of the gate. He never really, got comfortable. And then by the time he was healthy, it was pretty much too little, too late. And the little carries that he did get, like you said, not very inspiring. 18 carries, 41 yards, only 2.3 yards per carry. The one thing I did like, 4 forced missed tackles in those 18 carries. And he did have
pretty good
one.
Rate,
yeah, so which is nice. I like that, and he had the one run of 10+ yards. So that's nice, but it's man, I want to see more. I wanted to see him get more opportunities. This is another incomplete grade. It's just he never got out of the gates properly. Now you're hoping with a full offseason program, him fully healthy, he's able to really go into training camp and be able to actually compete and carve out a role. That's what you're hoping for Isaiah Spiller.
Yeah, I went with an incomplete. Last year, I gave it a B+. I liked him. I mean, it seemed like he was pretty widely considered the 3rd best running back in last year's draft class, and he wasn't the 3rd running back taken. It was, Kenneth Walker, it was Breece Hall, and then it was this guy, right? Yeah. Who, did a lot of his tough sledding in the SEC going up against future NFL dudes, and that was, I think, where it gave you the most hope. It'll be interesting to see how the scheme change helps him, right? Because we know that the Chargers, I think, would like to make him RB2 this year, because guess what? You only have 2 running backs on the current roster under contract for this season alone. Austin Eckler, Josh Kelly, both unrestricted free agents after this upcoming season. A lot of uncertainty there. Best case scenario, this dude comes in, right? But now it's easy to think back, okay, well, Tariq Woolen would have been nice in the 4th round, help some cornerback problems after what he did with the Seahawks as a rookie. So there's always ways you can look back and not like it. If I had to give it a pick this year, I give it an incomplete, probably a C- though, just because it's you only have to go on what you have to go on. And in this
Yeah.
case, it's a very, very small. There's just no way I can
Same.
sell you and be like, oh my God, guys, this is what you should get excited about. We just didn't see enough of it. And
Yeah.
pre-draft priors only last so long. I liked him
Right.
coming out of the draft. This is going to be a great opportunity for him. So let's go to round 5, pick 160. The Chargers end up going Tito Ogbennia, defensive tackle from UCLA. This was one I did not like, David. I gave this one a C+ coming out of the gates. There's certain parts of it I got, certain parts of it I didn't. Another kind of small sample size guy. How did you regrade this one?
Yeah, I mean, my initial grade was worse than yours. I had it at a C-. I just didn't understand the pick. I didn't see the fit. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But after I started watching him and after he got some opportunities to be a rotational player, you saw some redeeming qualities. Like, he definitely has some just brute physical strength. He had the ability to kind of hold up on those double teams.
Yeah.
He provided 4 pressures for you too in very limited, snaps. He only played 138 total snaps. Obviously, he, got the very, very bad knee injury where, he tore his patellar tendon. So it's just, it sucks. I mean, it's really another kind of incomplete grade just because he went out too late. But I think if you're looking at the sample size, I liked it a lot better than my initial analysis of it. So I took it from a C- up to a B-. I think it was a pretty quality player. I want to see how he rebounds. He is young. He has that on his side. If he comes back healthy, you can definitely see him and his spot in the rotation on that defensive line.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the one thing with JT Woods is when you did see him out there, it didn't look like he belonged. And that's the thing that's scary. With Tito, it looked like he belonged. And I think everything's so relative because it's a 5th round pick, right? So
yeah.
I had him jumping not as high as you did as far as, I didn't go a full letter grade up, but I had him going from a C+ up to a solid B. If you can get a rotational defensive lineman with a 5th round pick, I think that's something you would take to the bank every single time, right?
Yeah.
Getting a contributor. He was a dude I didn't think had any shot at sniffing the field as a rookie just because it seemed like he was more of a project to me. Obviously, super long arms, which is very good, but that doesn't mean everything, right? So he fit the physical intangibles the Chargers liked without really the proven production in college, which it seemed like they kind of leaned towards this year was more, I want to see you do it. I think it's a solid B, though. I think Tito has a future. Now it's just going to be interesting to see how he reacts to that, patellar tendon injury, because that is something that hits everybody differently, but it is a very, very serious injury. We'll see how he can rebound from that this year. But we do have another pick here, round 6, pick 195. I think one of your favorite picks last year, David, and that was even before we saw what he did. Jamari Salyer, the guard tackle from Georgia. I can't even just call him a guard, which is what we thought he was and what I have here in my notes, because now we know. David, what was your grade last year? What'd you bump that thing up to this year?
Well, hard to bump it up any higher than I already had it, because when I watched Jamari Salyer in the pre-draft process last year, I loved him. I did not understand how there was any way that he was going to make it to the 6th round. I thought he was going to go in the 3rd or 4th round easily. I thought he was, very safely a mid-round talent. And so for the Chargers to be able to get him in the 6th round, I was ecstatic. I had a strong A. And then you see what he did in the 2022 campaign, where he's thrust into action, having to be your left tackle for pretty much the entire season, and he just goes crazy and balls out just spectacularly. 669 pass block snaps, only 46 pressures. That's 1 pressure every 14.54 snaps, and only 5 sacks. That's 1 every 133 pass blocking snaps. He had an elite 75.9 pass blocking grade on PFF. It was, truly phenomenal what he was able to do. He saved the Chargers season. He was one of the biggest reasons why they were able to weather the storm and get to the playoffs. There's no other grade but an A+ for Jamari Salyer.
Yeah, I didn't know we had the same exact grade on him last year. We both had it as an A. We both liked him, thought he was a day 2 pick coming out in 2022. And I bumped him up to an A+ as well. I mean, I think important context here is he was very, very good for a guard playing tackle as a rookie playing left tackle, right? I mean, if you're matching him up against the best left tackles in the league, he's probably going to be towards the bottom of that, right? Probably middle of the pack. But what you're brought in matters, right? I mean, 46 pressures is still a lot of pressures to give up, but considering what we thought this dude was going to be, which was a guard on the inside, and he was a 6th round pick, he shattered every expectation. for him to play that well as a rookie, better than almost any rookie ever does playing left tackle in their first season outside of guys named Rashawn Slater. How could you give it anything other than an A+? What a pick, because I think it just hits all the criterias of what you want for a great draft selection. You got great, excellent value out of it. You got a great player out of it. You got versatility out of it.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't see how you could get anything better. Oh, also, you get a starting offensive lineman who can be a tackle as a 6th-round contract, which is like one of the more invaluable things you could ever get. Jamari Salyer, I can unequivocally say the best pick from this draft. The biggest home run as far as
a grand slam
value, play, being a good player, all of above. I mean, I love Jamari Salyer. What a pickup. Tom Telesco's best 6th-round pick ever. I'll say that.
Ever.
I don't think it's probably particularly close. But the Chargers did have another 6th-round pick that really, really impressed with Jamaree Taylor, who gave up like 10 touchdowns his last year in college and then went on to be like starting for the Chargers down the stretch of the season. So we have the rest of the day 3 picks to get to, and a bunch more guys really raising their grade after one season with the Chargers, which is hard to do as a 6th and 7th-round pick. And we'll get into that right after this. David, let's start with the 6th round and get to the Chargers' second of their 6th-round picks, because the Chargers really, really did some work. I mean, you could look at the back end in day 3 of their draft and like it better than you did in day 2 when it was just JT Woods, right? So a lot of things were done, but that's just today's show. On tomorrow's show, we are giving an inside look at the early camp battles that we are most looking forward to. There are a lot of positions on the line. There's a lot of playing time that's on the line. So we're going to be getting into that. And also Fan Mail Friday later on in the week for the everydayers out there. You know how to get it in. Make sure you hit us up at Locked On LAC and get your questions in there. You can hit us up on YouTube and put it in the comments or wherever you want to. But let's get to Jamaree Taylor here, David, cornerback out of Wake Forest. Almost right away, we said, okay, hey, this is a special teams play, right? You're getting a guy in the 6th round. You need some corner depth, but if you're looking at why the Chargers did this, he's a special teams player. And I think we can easily say, David, after what we saw last year, he has potential to be more than that.
No question about it. I think when I first saw the pick, and when in the later rounds, it's always I'm just looking for guys who have traits that can come in and earn a role and be productive somewhere on your football team. That's what you're looking for. So when you took Jamaree Taylor, I gave it a C grade initially. I felt like I could see the application, but I didn't need to see how he was going to fit at the NFL level. So looking at his body of work, this is a guy that made his money on special teams, was able to kind of shine a little bit there, and then eventually earned a role much later in the season on defense and was able to carve out, some snaps as your slot corner, also was thrust into action at outside corner a couple of times. So, with that, this is a guy who's going to be coming in fighting for, that slot corner job. He's one of the top candidates for it. So it goes from a C grade to I think a pretty strong B. You got to like the value there. A guy who was really just looking for an opportunity and turned it into someone who might be starting for you this year.
Yeah, I think it's a solid A for me. I had also had it as a C last year, but everything's relative, right? This is a 6th-round pick. This is the 214th player drafted in the 2022 draft class. If that guy becomes a special teams all-star, that's a win. Yeah. Like just that, right? If he never sniffs the field defensively, you could argue, okay, hey, you get a guy like Kasim Osgood, right, later on in the draft.
Oh, yeah.
You'll be happy even if he doesn't get any snaps at wide receiver. This is a dude that came in and was like not only getting more playing time because dudes were injured, was getting more playing time over some of the Chargers corners that are going to be starting for them this year, right? Like he was carving out snaps for himself in the playoffs. He got exposed a little bit at times, right? Like teams picked on him at times, but like the physicality, the play style, I think kind of a violent play style too. Like I think there's a really great energy with the way this dude plays and the way he fit into the Chargers defense where, hey, would I be happy with him being the only guy at slot with no competition, right? And just roll it out there with Michael Davis and Asante Samuel Jr. on the outside if J.C. Jackson can't go right away? No, I'd like some competition there. But like to get a guy that's even in the mix to be a starter for you in year 2 with the 214th pick, man, I don't know if you can do much, much better than that, right? Like that's so much better, such a big departure from the contributions that we saw out of former 6th-round picks by the Chargers. Go back and look. You're not going to find a lot of all-stars. Obviously now there's Jamari Salyer and Jasir Taylor. Like, this was the best 6th round of Tom Telesco's career. So I'll double down on that. But let's get into the first 7th round pick for the Chargers, pick 236. They went with Dean Leonard, a cornerback out of Ole Miss. I gave it a B- originally. I must have just been because of the pure athleticism. Dude was playing, at a freaky athletic level at Ole Miss, and also came from Canada and was playing great at playing collegiate Canadian football. David, what'd you give it last year? What'd you give it this year?
Yeah, again, in the 7th round, you're just looking for guys that have some traits, and Dean Leonard definitely had traits. He's 6 foot, was running 4.3, so he brought a lot to the table. I really love the perseverance of his story too. Just starting out in Calgary and then ending up in the SEC and playing some really meaningful snaps. And when he got to the Chargers, it was, you're not gonna see the field on defense, but you're going to get a lot of opportunities and be a kind of a core guy on special teams, and he definitely was. He played on kick return, kick coverage, punt return, punt coverage. He played 286 special team snaps, was your main gunner, made some very, very smart heads-up plays, and he had 5 special teams tackles. This is a guy that was one of the reasons why you saw a difference in your special teams unit last year. So as a 7th round pick, all you can ask for is someone that is going to come in and make any kind of impact. Dean Leonard definitely made an impact. So it goes from a C to a B+ for me. Definitely pretty strong pick for Dean Leonard there.
Yeah, like I said, I gave it a B-. I'm going to jump that up to a B+. Same with you. I like the pick a lot. We'll see if he factors into the defense. That's the biggest unknown right now. We just don't know, what the plan is for him defensively. He has good size, but he was maybe their rawest prospect coming out, right?
Definitely.
Him, Tito, obviously, JT Woods had crazy production, led college football in interceptions his last season, but obviously, as far as the tackling and things like that, we had a long ways to go. Dean Leonard was playing Canadian Football League and started 1 year at Ole Miss. Like, he sat the bench 1 year at Ole Miss, played 1 year at Ole Miss, and the dude made himself almost indispensable. There's a lot of guys that deserve a lot of credit for the Chargers' big improvements on special teams. But when I'm trying to look for the names, Jasir Taylor and Dean Leonard are at the top of my list. Like, DeAndre Carter was great as a punt returner. He was good.
Yeah, Scott, too.
Chris
the punter
Rump
was very good.
Nick Niemann, good at special teams. Like, there are a lot of guys that deserve a lot of credit for it. But for these dudes to come in and win gunner jobs for you right away, to have a gunner in Dean Leonard who really struggled at tackling as well in the preseason and then was like the most sure-handed special teams tackler that they had last year.
Yeah.
What an improvement in, like, a dude that it feels almost impossible that he's going to get cut. Like, it seemed like he
won a game
niche.
For you, right?
Yeah.
Against Denver. Like,
yeah,
he
well, him
won
and
that
Jasir
football
Taylor.
game.
Well, I'm going to give that one to Jasir Taylor. So for those who don't remember the first game against the Broncos, he's the one that recovered the punt. Jasir Taylor was the one that actually blocked the guy into the return man to make him muff it, and Dean Leonard was there to cover it up in a game where the Chargers may never have scored again. They might still be playing that game. Obviously it ends in a tie, but like it was a terrible, terrible game, and Dean Leonard put us out of our misery in combination with Jasir Taylor to make a special teams play and have special teams win you a game. I remember how much we were tripping about that. Then the Chargers special team goes into this season with a much higher bar, and one of the strengths of this unit that they should be adding to is some of the guys they took this year. So I love it. I liked the pick a lot. If you're getting that out of your 7th round pick, you will take that because the guy's on the team making contributions. So let's go to round 7, pick 260. Very interesting here, David. Xander Horvath, a.k.a. the most athletic fullback to ever come out of the draft in history. I gave it an A grade last year. What'd you give it?
I gave it a B grade last year just because I like the kind of the attitude of, hey, this guy's a physical freak. Let's just give him an opportunity and see what he's able to do.
Another special teams player, too.
Yeah, big special teams guy. And he got some play early on. Like, he scored 2 touchdowns early on in the season. Yeah, exactly. And,
which is wild.
At that point, I was like, okay, man, they're going to try to figure out some ways to incorporate him in the offense. And then silence. He pretty much was not involved at all. He had 10 of his 16 games where he only had 5 snaps or less. So it's not even really his fault for the grade that I have to give him, but it's really like a C-. And it's really more on the coaches for me just because, You saw him be productive early, and then you just did not involve him whatsoever the rest of the season. So I have to give this grade out, but I'm putting it on the coaching staff.
Sure. I mean, I think C- is a little harsh just because it's literally pick 260, right? Like this dude is basically,
that's fair.
Mr. What is it called? Was Brock Purdy Mr.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah. So I liked them taking a chance on it, right? Another thing where it's like they traded away 2 7th-round picks because they had 10 picks going into last year's draft. And there's just only so much you can get there. And like they came away with some core special teams guys. That may be Xander Horvath's best way to making this year's roster. He's the one guy on this list I think has the hardest time making this roster this year. I mean, fullback was not something Kellen Moore used a lot of, and when he did use it in Dallas, they used offensive linemen or tight ends to do it, right? They used a lot of different guys. Maybe they can find a way to kind of have him on the field, turn him into trying to kind of a blocking tight end a little bit, maybe a little flanker action, right, to help create some mismatches in the running game. But he's a 7th-round pick with a different offensive mind who wanted him, so it'll be very interesting to see. I'd like to think, Kellen Moore, with his offensive ingenuity, right? You give him a guy that, was like a 9.99 or I think a 10.0 at fullback as a, coming out of the athletic scores. So, maybe there's something he can do with him, right? Maybe he tries to turn him into one of those Kyle Juszczyk guys, and maybe that helps being able to create those mismatches in the running game, getting him on the field. He was an okay fullback. It's not like he was out there just bowling people over either in the small sample size we saw. If he can be a special teams player, if he can, find ways to get his athleticism in space and let him go hurdle dudes, because we know he has the ability to do that, maybe it raises. I'm going to give it a B- just because it's I think for him, at this point this year, right, as opposed to where we were last year where we thought they might try to get him on, involved in the offense. I don't know what the role is for him, so I'm going to have to see it first. But I think really one of Tom Telesco's most complete draft classes, right? You don't have a Justin Herbert in it. You don't have a Derwin James in it or a Joey Bosa, but you have a Jamari Salyer. You have a Jasir Taylor, right? You have a Zion Johnson who could be a great guard for you for 10 years. There's a lot of things to like from it, a lot of home runs, especially later on in the draft and finding contributions from your 6th-round pick, from your 5th-round pick, from your 7th-round picks. That's a big step up for Tom Telesco in some of the years of past. So his 2014 draft class, it was Tevin Reese and Marion Grice in the 6th and 7th round. Those guys didn't even make it onto the roster. You had guys like Max Turk, right, rest in peace, but also, guys later on that just never even sniffed the field, Dylan Parham. Is that his name? Something like
Dylan
that.
Cantrell.
No, Dylan Cantrell. That's
Dylan
what I'm
Cantrell.
getting at. Dylan Parham's on the Raiders now. Guard we watched last year. All these draft prospects getting mixed up. But just to be saying hey, this was progress. Hopefully some guys this year can follow in this footsteps. And I'm very excited to kind of see, where we were when we graded these guys and kind of where we'll feel about it or how we'll feel about it next year. But that's going to do it today. The good thing is the everydayers know we will be back with you guys tomorrow, getting into early camp battles, and we'll also have all of the latest coming out of Chargers rookie camp and the OTAs and kind of the beginning of that, as well as Fan Mail Friday coming up later in the week. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on all of our social media. You can follow me on Twitter at DanTalkSports, David Drogemeyer on Twitter at DroTalkSD, as well as the show's page at LockedOnLAC. You can also hit us up on Instagram at LockedOnChargers and get your Fan Mail Friday questions in there, or on our Facebook page, Locked On Chargers, as well. So make sure you guys hit us up. You can also call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. I know Chargers Packer fan Donnie made a very bold prediction in the voicemails we'll be getting into on Friday. He's going to Lambeau. Which jersey will he pick? Because this man is on the fence about his fandom. So we'll get into that. You guys can get involved as well and leave your questions on Twitter, on the YouTube, in the YouTube comments, or wherever. But we'll be back with you guys tomorrow getting into early camp battles. But until then, take it easy and go Bolts.